Edward, welcome back to the TED Show. Last show of the day, last show of the week. So we saved, I can't say the best for last because his wife was on earlier. We have Jared Dunn on, life coach agent. We're going to talk about transforming lives through real estate, what that all means. He's also got great energy on this Dunn Friday. Welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing?
I am doing great. It is a pleasure to be with you. And you know, I watched my wife's earlier, so I think it's going to be a hard act to follow.
She was on fire. I got to tell you, that was so on point, and I loved everything she talked about. So great. Yeah. But you know, you got your own thing, and she has to look better. She's prettier.
She is prettier.
I'm sorry. Don't take that badly. All right. So you know they love origin story on the show. We'd love to know like the journey because people are always in a certain part of their lives where they're making the journey. So they love to hear how you got to where you're at. So give them a little background on you.
Very cool. Well, origin of story. You know, growing up, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I came through kind of growing up, I thought I had the ideal childhood. And then in looking back, I realized it was fully traumatic childhood. So I'll kind of get to that in just a little bit about some of the work I've done to get to where I am. But in the process of going to college, you know, I knew I wanted to make a difference in people's lives. So I actually went to school to be an elementary school teacher. So I did that for a couple of years. And actually prior to that is when I met my wife. It was right after graduation. I was teaching and I had this 8th grade girl that was persistent on wanting to introduce me to her dance instructor. And I had never gone on a blind date in my life. And I kept saying no and no and no. And she just said, this is before, we did anything online. So I gave her a picture of me at graduation in my cap and gown and a cigar. And I guess she liked the bad boy look. So it worked. And we had been in other relationships before that, but we were engaged in 6 weeks and married in 9 months.
Wow.
And yes. And so now married 22 years and just.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome.
Yes. And then have an incredible, amazing, phenomenal daughter who's now 10 years old, going on 18. Just the joy and pride of my life. So love being her daddy. And so
it's so cool how that transpires, right? That's why I tell people, look, if there's no risk, if you don't feel like you're going to lose your life, go on the blind date. Go to that event. Go do something that's outside because that may be the message God, if I'm a faith guy, or the universe, whatever you believe, is trying to send to you. That message you keep asking for, a sign, that could be a sign.
It is. And so I figured when I went on the blind date, I was like, I'm just going to shake it up. I didn't want to do the traditional blind date. So I took her to a laser Pink Floyd show and to Mexican food. And little did I know Mexican food was her love language. And she always loved Pink Floyd. And after that, I had her hooked.
It was meant to be.
It was meant to be.
You took a risk. Nobody likes a blind date. I can tell you that. So that's a good thing for people to know because I think a lot of people stay in their own. They're so afraid to get outside their comfort zone. And that would certainly be one of mine. But where did the life coach agent come in? Obviously, you weren't 8 years old and said, hey, I want to grow up and be a life coach agent. Nobody says that. So how did that journey go?
Yeah. So after I met my wife, about a year and a half later, had just a life-changing experience. I didn't grow up knowing God at all. Didn't have any friends that were Christians, and my mom died when I was 19. And from that death experience, it really had me questioning through college, like, who is God? Does he exist? And so that's kind of when my wife and I came together. We started going to church together, and we were involved in the church, and then had a just life-changing experience where we knew we were called to go into ministry. So we left everything after year 3, moved to Sydney, Australia, went to Hillsong Bible College, got trained up there, and had a life-changing experience. And just knew then I wanted to make a difference in people's lives. And at that point, I knew one of my core drivers was contribution and development and really wanting to, and again, also servant leadership, really helping people navigate just their lives. And so we came home from Australia, started church with 8 people and $50. And from that place, it just kept growing and growing and growing. And then went from there, just kept growing from that church to another church, to eventually went out to a church in Anaheim, where I was the executive pastor, a staff of about 50. And we went from 3,500 to 7,000 in 1 year.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was leading that, and we bought the old Boeing headquarters for like 500,000 square feet of space. It was crazy and running hard. My daughter was born, and I started just to kind of feel burnt out, and I kept trying to push and push and push and go. And, so I just was, my superpower in that process is compartmentalization. But what I didn't realize, it was also my kryptonite. And so through that process, I just kept trying to push through, and I was hustling and working hard until I couldn't do it anymore. And then went through some difficult experiences. My brother died of cancer. My father-in-law died, and I tried to resuscitate him for like 45 minutes. Oh. And I didn't get any help after that. I didn't go to counseling. I had never been to counseling before that. And so, from that experience, had really bad PTSD. And then a few years ago, I finally hit my wall. I completely burnt out. And in burning out of a major career in ministry, I was doing coaching, consulting for companies, small and large. And I burnt out, and I hit a place where I just knew I needed to just discover me and figure out what are some of the things under the surface. And just to be completely transparent, my wife and I were going through some issues. Sure. And at that point, I just said, I'm going to invest in me. I've invested into everybody else for years. So I began the journey about 2 years ago, actually this month, 2 years ago. Went to some intensives, began to learn a lot about trauma, becoming trauma informed, learning about how the experiences from childhood, childhood abandonment, and just you name it, attachment theory.
Things you had never dealt with before.
Never.
That's the thing. I want to ask you something, because I was listening to about the ministry.
Yeah.
You got burnt out. I think everybody does in some way, shape, or form. But when you're talking about ministry, were you at the time doing what Jared wanted, or were you listening to the message from God? I think a lot of people push through and they get burnt out because they are doing what they think they should be doing instead of listening to what drove them to do it in the first place.
That is a great question, because when I got into ministry, it was absolutely the right heart, right motives, wanted to impact lives. And like we were in Australia, we were doing street teams, helping people that were broken and disadvantaged and destitute, and just serving them. And we saw a profound change. And then over years of doing ministry and, getting moved up higher and higher. And, I was moved up quickly, where a lot of times people take 30 years to get to the place I was. I realized I went from being to doing, and I went from what I felt like God was wanting for me to really, just maintaining and doing what Jared wanted. And it's when I shifted into that place of what Jared wanted and was just trying to, maintain where I was at. Again, it went from even to the point of the right heart and motives and stepping out with 8 people and $50 to a place of, well, I can't leave ministry, because what am I going to do? I've done this for so many years. How am I going to provide for my family? And I was thinking so like in the box, but it wasn't until I actually kind of hit my bottom. And, what they call it is an existential crisis, or some people call it midlife crisis. And that's actually where I really had my awakening. We think awakening happens when we want to prepare for that. It doesn't. It's usually when we are put to the fire or hit our bottom. And when I hit my bottom of literally to the point I get up in the morning, I don't know how to move. I couldn't think. The visionary inside of me was gone. And so I began really starting over. Who's Jared? What do I want? But I did know that I wanted to still get back to my roots of making a difference in people's life. And that really, in that journey of taking some time off, I began to say, what am I passionate about? I love people. I'm passionate about serving and making a difference. So what's the vehicle that's going to allow me to do that? And so I've always loved real estate. My dad was an architect. My brother's in construction management. I've always done investments. But when I began to realize that I could do real estate and align my passion and my purpose, is when I knew that really led me to where I am today. And it was about a year ago, I was doing some meditation. And during meditation, it was just out of nowhere, it was dropped under my spirit, life coach agent. And I was like, what is that? And I began to ask people, hey, what do you think about this? And they're like, I've never heard of that. It's like, neither have I. And so when I realized, like, I'd go to the gym, people would say, what do you do? I'm a realtor. Well, so is everybody and their brother.
Right.
When I began to say I'm a life coach agent, every single person would say, what is that? And that would lead me to share what I do, why I do it, and how I do it. And really, since that time, it's kind of morphed into kind of a very specific niches, which has also led to, one, helping just clients, buyers, sellers, which I love. But something I didn't see coming was helping divorcing homeowners. And so that's something that just came out of nowhere. But just to give you a little bit of context of why.
Yeah,
why that
tell us, because I'm fascinated.
So here's the deal, because people have asked me, how can you reconcile being in ministry for so many years and yet be working within the divorce realm? And realizing people are going to get divorced with or without me, but I have an opportunity to come alongside people in the most traumatic state of their lives and support them. And so, and really where that came from was when I was 13 years old, my parents, after 34 years of marriage, went through a horrific divorce. I experienced the fallout. My siblings did. A lot of pain. And that really, again, as I did my unpacking the past 2 years, revealed a lot of trauma that came through that. And I realized that if I can come in and work alongside divorcing homeowners, not only do I help the spouses, I help the children. And that's really matters to me, is that it's like looking back at myself, wishing I would have had somebody there to help me in that process. And that's what I feel like I get to do. And I'm excited to just.
I love the way you frame that. You get to do it.
Yes.
So important.
So many times people are like, I have to do this. Yep. And when you can go from the have to the get to, it changes the way you wake up in the morning. It gives you that sense of purpose. Every time I get a phone call with someone going through a divorce, every situation is unique. I get to do that. I get to show up. I get to be that person in their life to make a difference. And so I see it as a privilege. It's definitely not about money. It's great to get paid, and again, but what I do really working with divorcing homeowners is I do it at no cost. The only way I get paid is if I earn the right to gain the listing or if they buy a home. And so I come in and support them and, really try to add value to their lives, to the process, so that when the time comes and they need to make a decision, that they trust me to also handle the transaction.
Right. I think it's so cool. That is such a unique approach.
Yeah.
Because when I first saw Life Coach Agent, I thought, all right, what does this mean? I didn't know if you were a realtor or not. I mean, I could have looked it up, but I'm trying to figure it out because that's what most people do. And that's what I do. I go and look at what you have there before I do the deep dive and get my first impression. So because I didn't understand it, like those people you were mentioning earlier, I wanted to know more. So kudos to that, because that creating that buzz and creating that inquisitive kind of spirit is so good for people, because when I say I'm in mortgages, people run.
Yes.
Or when I used to be an insurance agent, Lord, they would run for sure. But when you're talking about helping families and making a longer term impact, that's a life's work, passion kind of thing, not transactional. You're all relationship driven.
Well, and you just said it, even kind of as I was going down this journey and writing down my goals and, even like, okay, what does this look like? Because I kept hearing people time and time again talk about transactional and how like 80% of people don't use the same agent a second time. And I thought there's a disconnect, and it's because it's transactional. And so I wrote one day, I said, because real estate should not be only transactional, it should be relational, memorable, but also transformational. And so that's why I believe real estate has the opportunity for me and for my clients to be hands down one of the most transformational experiences possible. And the reason is transformation usually happens at transition, and so there's a direct correlation between the two. Transition when we are changing a job, transition when we are ending a marriage, transition when we're moving into a larger home or downsizing. And what happens is, that's why they say with transition that divorce and moving into a new home is one of the greater stressors in life. And it's that stress that we a lot of times push down, we don't deal with. And again, that which you suppress comes back up again. And
always.
And so I love coming alongside people and ask him, okay, how are you doing? And navigating the process and really digging into their, how I can support them so that they can come out better and stronger for it. And I hope that their lives are better as a result of me being there supporting them.
I think it's fascinating, the approach, because real estate really is relationships. So if you're in real estate and you're a transactional person, you must be miserable. I don't know how you would do it. And I can't imagine living life like that as a transaction only. But what you're doing, I would imagine that, like, if I'm your client, and there are probably people out there thinking, well, what does that actually mean, Jared? I'm your client or potential client. I'm coming in. How do you make the transition from talking about a 3-2 house over there that's going to have 75 offers on it, and actually talking about the transformative part of what you do?
Yeah, great question. A few ways. One, a lot of times, I work with some great family law attorneys here in Orlando. I've built relationships with them. Some work downtown where my office is. I have one in Claremont, one in Maitland, just incredible attorneys. And as I began to share with them what I'm doing in this process, I kept hearing from them say, I've never heard of this. And that's when I really felt like I was onto something, is because it wasn't just what I was doing. It's also, as you know, from Kimberly is a life coach, a certified life coach, who's also now finishing her certification as a divorce coach. So it's just not me, but actually she's also kind of like my superpower. Because, when we actually go to meet with clients for the first time going through a divorce, we don't walk in and start talking about the 3-2, or if they're listing their home, like, hey, here's what you need to do. They'll be overwhelmed. And anybody that's gone through a divorce knows that you lose your mind. What they tell you is you literally go into your limbic brain, which is that fight, flight, or freeze. You're no longer in that executive reasoning. And that's how people say, how did they ever make that decision through that process? So when we come in, we sit with them, we hear their story, not with sympathy, but with empathy. Right. We sit where they sit. We hear their story, and then we find out, how can we help you? And then we don't try to overwhelm them with, hey, now let's get your home sold. We begin to kind of chart out step by step. Because if I just said, here's our entire process, it would overwhelm them. But what I do is I say, here's our next step. And so what I have is a defined process. Rather than waiting on the back end, hoping an attorney throws me a lead, I actually come in on the front end working with family law attorneys, where we meet with clients in their, a lot of times we'll go to where we can meet in their conference room at the law office. We can go to their home. They can come to our office. And we go through a very defined process. And I have a great affiliate team with title, mortgage, inspectors, life coaches, financial planners. So they would really say, okay, what's basically a holistic approach? What do you need mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially? So we go through the entire process, and then we begin to work out, okay, step one, do you want to stay in the house or do you want to sell the house? And then we, again, help navigate that process in making sure that they're supported every step of the way. And again, by doing so, we earn the right to gain the listing. We had one lady back in January, one of the most incredible women, went through a very difficult situation. Husband left after many years. And Kimberly and I went into her home and just sat for an hour and a half, and she just cried. And we were able to hear her story. And, and through that process, after selling her home, I was able to get on the market, sold at full price within one day. And she called me back, said, my life is forever changed. And here's the other thing. Something we do use kind of unique and different is when we work with divorcing homeowners, not only will then I also handle the transaction, Kimberly also gives them up to 5 hours of free coaching to help do the process after the transaction. And even after that, if she's been working with them, we give them half off the price after that. So again, our goal is to be there for the long term. So it's not just trying to get new people. That's how in real estate, building referrals, repeats, and again, really wanting to make a difference in people's lives. And that's how I believe we're going to make a difference in our community for the long haul.
And you've planted, like you really make this multidimensional for that, because in my mind, first of all, the first thing I think of is this is your ministry. It's just a different. So this is your ministry, and that's how I treat my world and my business too.
Absolutely.
And that's powerful because it adds that extra layer, extra dimension to what you're doing. Yeah. And those are the kind of long-term relationships you build. You're not in it for the short game and the quick closing. You're in
No.
it to build a relationship to change lives. People
Absolutely.
don't forget that kind of stuff. They will refer you business. And I'm always amazed at the people who throw down a business card at me and they don't want to know anything about me. They just want to tell how can I help them, which is how a lot of our profession does.
Yeah.
And so the people have an interesting perception of how real estate mortgage people are. You're creating something completely different. And I love that because the experience is what people remember, and how, it's that old Maya Angelou thing where they remember how they feel, how you made them feel. And so that is what you're doing. You're creating this whole, in my mind, this whole world of people who you're not only helping heal, but you're helping them with a transaction that could have been incredibly much more stressful.
Absolutely. I'll say you had mentioned something, people just throwing cards at you. What we have found working with even family law attorneys, they've told us that normally agents will come to them, throw a card at them and say, hey, if you got somebody, let me know. But they said, nobody's ever sent them business. And that's something we've been doing, is actually sending them business, because with Kimberly, she's going to get people on the front end. She already has where they don't even know if they're going to, where to turn. They need an attorney. They don't know if they're going to stay in the home. And so therefore we've connected them with some of the family law attorneys to help them navigate that process. And so again, it's not just send something to me. We want to add value to family law attorneys. We want to add value to families. And again, we want to be known for what we give away, not for what we take.
I love it. So cool. All right. See how fast it goes?
I know.
So what I want people to do is to reach out to you. What's the best way for them to learn more about what you do and how you work with divorcing couples, and really all of the stuff you're pouring back into the community, which is such a beautiful thing. So, I'm a big proponent of that. So when people are listening, I guarantee you they're going to want to reach you. What's the best way?
I love that. I appreciate that. A couple ways. If you're going through a divorce and you have questions and not sure how to navigate it, you can reach out to me. Go to divorcinghomeowner.com. That's one way. My main website is lifecoachagent.com. I have a lot of information on there. And again, I'm not just divorcing homeowners. That's one of my key areas, but I get a lot of people that are just great people and appreciate building relationships. And so whether you're looking to buy a home, sell a home, I would love the opportunity to connect with you.
And I have to give you a public thank you. You sent me this wonderful message the other day, and I think I told you, but it's very rare that people catch me off guard or surprise me. So thank you for that. And that's just a testament. It was a very supportive, wonderful message from Jared, but I guarantee that is how he is with all of his clients, potential clients, relationships. And that is a big, big thing for me. So thank you for that.
You're really welcome.
You guys go to lifecoachagent.com, reach out to Jared, reach out to Kimberly. We did the Dunns today. And so we are officially done for the day. I had to throw
another done deal.
Cheesy dad joke. But I love what you do, and I greatly appreciate you and your friendship. And thank you. I want you to come back anytime you guys want to talk. We can talk more about the divorcing process and all of that. I think people are hungry to find real relationships and real connections, even when they're doing a business transaction. And you certainly bring that.
Thank you so much. I really value our friendship, and it's a pleasure to be on here.
Pleasure to have you, my friend. You all reach out to Jared Dunn, lifecoachagent.com. Everybody.